Sackboy A Big Adventure. I remember that the reason I bought my PlayStation 3 was because of Big Little Planet, which was, at the time a very unique game in the fact that everything was constructed like from crafting materials, and a platform game like that really appealed to me, and that was the main reason I jumped from Xbox 360 to PlayStation 3. Well, I wouldn't say I jumped because I had both consoles, but it was the main reason I bought it together with Metal Gear Solid 4, to be honest. However, even though today that game may appear very dated, at the time it was quite a novelty and it looked really good. Everything seemed quite realistic. So when PlayStation 5 was announced, and one of the first games that was coming with the launch of the console was Sackboy A Big Adventure, I was quite happy about it because I was going to keep playing this. And you don't see many platforms like this in this next gen or current gen consoles, and the fact that they were also changing the formula was something that appealed to me a lot. However, this is not about the game, this is the technical video, and we are going to be talking about that. One of the reasons that makes Sackboy so appealing to me is how realistic all the materials are and everything they construct the world with. Like, the textures are very detailed and everything looks quite good. And this game in particular, using the current gen of consoles, even though this game also came for PlayStation 4, looked very clean, and it was running at good 60 frames per second. So of course I jumped and bought the game first day and I started playing it. And I have to say, I really like this game. I think it's a very good platform game and everybody needs to give it an opportunity. For some reason, Sony decided to launch this game on PC without basically any promotion. This game was announced, but it just came out and I don't think many people knew, and that's not that good considering this is a very good game that deserves more promotion. And I don't know why Sony is treating this particular game like this, especially because the port is quite decent and they didn't just put the same game on PC. They took the time to improve some areas like adding ray tracing and the support for DLSS, and that means that they are taking a lot of care for their ports. Many other games that are born on PC don't even have some of these options, so the fact that they added them, I think, is quite a good thing. And as you can see, this is a very clean looking game and is very well optimized. The options for ray tracing are subtle, but they use a lot of GPU power. They are reflections, they are ambient occlusion, and some shadow options, which I have not been able to capture what they are supposedly. However, the ambient occlusion, it has an impact, but it's the reflections that really destroys your performance, in the fact that there is 2 levels, and I will recommend anyone trying the RT reflections to only use the first level, since the second one seems to just add more rays, which I don't think is necessary. Even though these options may not seem like much, they will destroy your option. You can see that you can go from low to very high with a very good frame rate, and when you activate ray tracing, it basically half your performance, and this is with an RTX 4090, so be careful with that. However, these subtle options really do improve the quality of the image on the screen in a very subtle way, giving physicality to some of the more metallic materials and making them more believable. Some of the tin cans and so on looks really more cemented in the world because they reflect actually what is around them. The same for the ambient occlusion, which gives the game like every object seems more part of a cohesive world. So they are very good options to have in there. Also, together with this, obviously they included DLSS. Unfortunately, they didn't include anything like FSR or XeSS, which is a big problem, and you're going to see later why. Because the biggest problem I find with this is that many cards are really close to being able to improve the image or get stability, and you can't because you don't have any of those options. Any RTX card obviously will support DLSS, but the rest will not. So as you can see here, once again, the RT option with everything off and with everything on, there is not that much of a big difference, but there is a subtle difference. The main problem is that subtle difference really costs you a lot of performance. But you know, my objective here is always to get to 60 FPS. After that is your option, your decision to what you want to limit or not. But the point is I will show you at least how to get to that or how it will behave and if you can get to that on different hardware. So the first thing I always do is test the game on a very old GPU. Well, 7-year-old, but sort of good CPU, but nothing new. This will allow us to understand how CPU dependent and if you need a modern CPU to be able to play this game and what sort of FPS you are going to be able to reach. We can see here that with an i7 6700K with ray tracing off, we can get over 200 FPS. So already we know we are going to be able to use this on a variety of CPU without no issues. And remember, ray tracing will put a lot of more usage to that CPU. So at the moment, if you have an old CPU, you probably don't have even an RT card, so that's not important, and you will be able to enjoy this game for sure at least 60 FPS because this game is not very CPU dependent. As you can see here, we are playing with no issues whatsoever and we can get to 200 to and more. So we can assure that CPU wise we are going to get, even with the very old CPU, at least 60 FPS. So that's a good start for this game and not what happened with Gotham or a Plague Tale Requiem in my latest test. So then if we move and we activate ray tracing, because well, you know, we also need to check how ray tracing will affect performance. Remember, I'm running this game on an old CPU but with a 3060 Ti with a low resolution with the DLSS on, because the point is to see how the CPU will affect frame rate. I don't want to be limited by the GPU, and you can see that even with ray tracing on, we can keep over 60 FPS and even get to 100. So I think it's fair to say that most people will be able to play this game no matter what, at least CPU wise, with no problems, at least 60 FPS. So that's a good thing, and we see that the game is at least optimized for that. That is not an easy thing to say these days when we've seen the last two games I have analyzed in this channel. Okay, so the first thing I do normally is test it with my own personal computer, which, as you know, is a 12600KF with DLSS, an RTX 4090, sorry. So the reason for that is to show you the game in the best possible quality. In this case, I'm using RT at max out and DLSS quality. And the reason I use DLSS is because that will ensure me that I hit a consistent 60 frames per second or more, because yes, believe me, without DLSS, ray tracing is it takes so much performance that you won't be able to hit 60 constantly. So in this case, I am testing the game with DLSS quality on, so I can also take advantage of the quality that the anti-alias of DLSS brings to the game. So I think this is the best you are going to get the game, at least at 4K. Maybe somebody going to put this game at 8K and it's going to look even better, but I think in terms of performance and quality video, you can start looking here that the games look quite good. Much better than it looked on PlayStation 5, because we're playing at more than double the resolution, because it was 1440p, sorry, if you want to get to 60 FPS. If you play at 30, then the game will go to 4K native, if I don't remember wrong, or 1800p. I'm not quite sure of the numbers at the moment. However, you can see here the PlayStation 5 didn't support ray tracing, so we are looking at a game that looks much better than the PlayStation 5 did already just 2 years ago. So that's a good thing, because that shows that PlayStation cares about putting the best version of their games out there and not just doing a simple port, which many companies do. In this case, they are improving the game. They are adding other options so people on PC can really take advantage of their hardware and their capabilities. If you don't have a ray tracing card or you don't feel the performance hits is good enough, fine, you can enjoy that. But if you have a good hardware, you can also enjoy the extra option. So I think that's what is all about PC. It's about option, and people can, you know, choose what they want and play the way they want. And that's, for me, is what is so good about PC gaming. So now we are going to start, and we are going from low to high and sort of away, and we're going to start with the GTX 1060. In this case, you can put the game at 1080p and high, because on very high the game will not be as stable. For some reason, the very high option, which does include RT for obvious reasons, is quite demanding, so you will get some lots of it under 60. This is why I said it's unfortunate that the game at the moment doesn't support FSR or XeSS, because with FSR on this card we could have at least, you know, maybe got 1080p very high and use FSR to stabilize the frame rate. But unfortunately we don't have that option, so in this case we have no alternative but to play just a 1080p high, which is still quite good, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that we could have gone higher if we had those options. So the game also has lots of stuttering problems, but I think it's just on when it's compiling shaders. For some reason the game doesn't compile at the beginning, and the game seems to be very heavy, and I think this game is built on Unreal if I don't remember wrong, so that may explain why there is so many problems when compiling with the shaders for this game. So that's something to have in mind, that when you see that happening on the screen, it's not because the machine is not capable, it's just some compilation. Because also the game is very specific when it comes to reading the hard drive. The game tanks very hard. For example, on loading screen you can see the frame rate going to even 20 FPS. But of course it doesn't matter because it's just a loading screen, but it's quite curious that it happens every time it's trying to read or write to the hard drive. So that may happen to you no matter what hard drive you're using. When you save or when it could happen and trigger a small stuttering because of this. It seems to be very sensitive, and I hope this is corrected on the next patch. So after this we are going to test obviously with the next card in my arsenal, which is the 2066 gigabytes, a card that I'm very fond of because I think even many people hate it and say ray tracing doesn't run and so on and so on. I think this card has shown that it has aged very good, at least from my point of view, if you bought it at the original price. And in this case we can play the game at 1440p with DLSS quality on very high and activating the ambient occlusion, ray trace ambient occlusion. Yes, if we activate any of the reflection options here, the performance will tank, at least at 1440p. If you play the game at 1080p, you probably will be able to activate reflections, but you will have to also activate DLSS. So many people don't like to activate DLSS when they're playing at 1080p, but that's up to you. But I thought that this was the best compromise, getting to an RT which is quite good from my point of view. If you activate it, it will give you a very good change in image, and it's not as heavy as the reflection. The reflection adds a little bit more of credibility to metal and other, but I think AO is a good compromise here. So you can play and have a very 60 FPS experience, very stable, and still enjoy a good quality image with ray tracing and DLSS on quality, so you don't have to go as low as balance or performance to achieve the 60 FPS minimum. Of course, then if you want to go to 120 to or more than 60, that's up to you, and you may have to disable ray tracing completely. Once again, I had to say that my goal here is to show you what I think is the best balance, so you can have an idea. After that, any other options or change you do is up to you. This is just for you to have an idea what to expect. So when we come now to the next card we're going to test is the Intel Arc 750. And as you know, I have some, I really want this card to triumph because I want a third competitor. So you know, sometimes I feel the performance is not great, but I'm sure many of you are curious about how this card performs on different areas. And I have to say, in this game, it doesn't perform that bad. I have to say, I'm playing the game at 1440p, very high, with ray tracing AO on, and I have to say that I turned reflections, and yes, you will play under 60 FPS, but the ray tracing performance was much better than the 2060, where I was closer to 60 FPS with the Arc 750 than I was with the 2060. However, I had to use 19% resolution in this case, just because, as I said, while the 2060 was using DLSS, we don't have anything similar. We don't have FSR and we don't have XeSS. So that's a shame, because I am wondering how much would I have gotten if I had FSR at least in quality or balance mode, maybe I would have been able to activate ray tracing. However, as you can see here, the performance is quite good. Even in this case, we can get 60 FPS. The only problem I see is there is a little bit more of stuttering when compiling the shaders, which take a little bit longer, but you can see that after a while it seems to stabilize and everything works quite good. So yeah, in this case I will say the RX 750 is behaving very good, especially with ray tracing, where it's more stable than the actual 2060. So I would say that, I don't know if, you know, with XeSS this game will have performed better, which it probably would, or with FSR, but I think the 750, all considered here, is doing a quite good job. So now we go to the AMD RX 6600 XT, and this is the only AMD card I'm testing today. And normally I like to include this card, especially when it's a port from a PlayStation 5 game, because this is basically the equivalent of the PlayStation 5 GPU, because they are almost number by number the same card. There are some difference, but at the end of the day, the behavior is quite similar, except for the bandwidth, which is the problem when we're talking high resolutions. But however, with this game, the game performs exactly the same as it does on the PlayStation 5. To the fact that as you can see, we're playing at 1440p, very high, with no ray tracing, which is exactly the way that the PlayStation 5 behaves. If I don't remember wrong, if I do, I am, please someone correct me, but I think that's the resolution you play when you're playing at 60 FPS. So we're playing at the highest quality with no ray tracing, which the PlayStation 5 doesn't support anyway. And the reason why I'm playing with no ray tracing is because even using the same specs as the configuration as the ARC, I mean 90% 1440p, we could not activate ray tracing ambient occlusion, because the performance will go even under 60 FPS. So what I'm trying to say here is that in terms of ray tracing, at least the 6600 is behaving worse than the RX 750 was. So in that terms, it means that the RX 750 in general seems to have better capability than the RX 6700 XT in rasterization, especially with ray tracing. So that's quite good to say about the Intel Arc, you know, even though maybe price wise the 6600 is a little bit cheaper. The point is that in ray tracing, honestly, the Intel Arc is so much better. We cannot activate any option in here for that, so that's unfortunately. But once again, I wonder if this game supported FSR, if we could have activated RTX and at least play with only that option. I know that we wouldn't for sure be able to use reflections. However, as you can see, we can have a very good experience, 1440p, 60 FPS stable, besides the stuttering caused by the shader compilation. So I think this is a win for anyone who bought this card, and you know, you can still compare to the behavior of the PlayStation 5 if that's what you're looking for. So I think the 6600 is going to be always an interesting case for comparisons when we're doing this, and I will keep including it. Finally, the last card I wanted to test was the RTX 3060, and the reason I wanted to test this is because this is like the big brother of the 2060, at least for the moment, right? Because it's the newer card, and this shows something very interesting, that yes, with every generation we gain performance, that's what we expect, but we normally expect performance gain for rasterization. In this case, we can see that not only we are getting performance gain for rasterization, but also for ray tracing and the tensor core for DLSS. You can see here that now even we have basically the same configuration as the 2060, but we have added ray tracing reflections. And you may see, well, you know, you just added one more option and now you're calling it to be more performance. But if you saw how much of an impact make reflections in this game, and I'm not using very high reflections, but even so, we must be losing at least 40% performance by activating every single RT option these games offer. You can see that we are still being able to play a 60 stable FPS with all the ray tracing options on, and all those little stutter, as I said, are shader compilation and not because the card couldn't handle that situation. So that shows that not only the DLSS and the tensor core improved, but also the RT performance of the cards, which is showing that with just one generation now we are able to play this game with every single RT option. Of course DLSS helps, but that's the whole point, and I think honestly that when you use DLSS quality, the game tends to look even a little bit better than native, and that's just because DLSS tends to put this whole anti-aliasing thing in the game that looks so much better. And now we can enjoy a game with a 3060 that looks much better than the PlayStation counterpart. And this is with the lowest, well, not the lowest is the 3050. Unfortunately, I don't have that card. I think I would like to get one and test it against the 2060 and see how it goes in terms of ray tracing. And I think this game will be quite a good candidate for that. But anyway, having said that, as you see, well, this is a game I will recommend, and you can play on a variety of hardware. And if you forget about ray tracing, the performance is going to be very high. You can see that CPU wise, you don't need anything new or super fast. When you're not even using ray tracing, you can get over 100 FPS easily, and even with a 1060 you can get a 60 FPS experience. I'm sure that probably even a 1050 Ti, just by changing settings and maybe lowering the resolution or 900p, you will be able to still play a 60 FPS. So I would say this game will run very good, and if you don't mind and you have a very old hardware, worst case scenario, you can limit the game to 30 FPS, which is in this case is not the best option considering it's a platform, but you know, there is that option. So I think this is a game that will adapt very well on a variety of hardware, and believe me, this is a game I really liked at the time when I played on PlayStation 5, and I would recommend to anyone who likes platform games, because I think this is a very well-made one with lots of secrets, and it's quite a lot of fun and things to grab, like costumes and stuff that you can get. So I hope you like this video, and as always, I please ask you to subscribe, like, and see you on the next video.